I tell my retail clients, and I think this applies across the board, regardless of your industry, when you have a culture that attracts the kind of people you want on your team, then people need you, right? And so you're not looking for people, people are looking for you. And so the pool of applicants becomes a whole lot prettier.
Yes. And the other thing is I've learned that when we have a really good candidate, when somebody comes or we've found someone or someone comes to us, even if we don't really have the need for them, sometimes we're just like, you know what, we will create a need for this person because in 6 months from now, we're going to wish we had this person here.
Yeah.
Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. Kristi Brocato, thank you for coming on the show. Justin Chopin with Above the Legal Limit. Kristi, you are the founder of the Retail Lab.
Yep.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So much fun.
I'm horrible at staying on topic.
Okay.
So I'm going to do it, and we're just going to shift topics all entirely.
That's fine.
Tell me
I am
about
too.
the Retail Lab. What's up about that?
Well, the Retail Lab exists to help retailers get out of the weeds and find freedom.
Okay.
Simply because I was in the weeds for 28 years in my first business. It sucked being there. I didn't know how to get out of it. I eventually got coaching and learned how to get out of it. But I never want my retail clients to feel that way because it's horrible, because they feel alone. And when you have a normal job, you have a boss. You have someone to tell you what to do and lead you. Well, when you're an entrepreneur,
you're on an island.
You're on your own.
That's it.
And you feel very alone. And you don't know if the decisions you're making are driving you forward, costing you money.
You can't ask anyone.
No.
Right? Who are you going to ask?
Exactly. So they turned to me, and I believe in leading with authenticity, leading with heart. I share a lot. I have countless wins, but also countless challenges that I've gone through in my 28-year journey. Yeah. So, I feel pretty qualified to tell them what they need to do to get their act together.
Okay, I love this.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you because I also am in a sort of a mentoring group for lawyers. And it's not here in New Orleans, it's in Atlanta. But because for years I was running this firm, were almost 10 years. I don't know the answers. Like, that's the big secret. And when I tell the lawyers, I don't know, I don't know the answer, they get really, they're like, oh God, the world's crumbling. They're so afraid. I'm like, it's the truth, man. I'm making this shit up as we go along, and sometimes it sticks, and sometimes it's like a big screw up. But don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. It's all on me. Yep. But it's an exhausting way to be. And so, who am I going to? If I need advice on advertising, or I need advice on marketing, or I need advice on overhead, what should I be paying these people? How much staff is too few, and how much is too much? I can't call Morris Bart. No. Love the guys over at Mobart, but I can't just call them up and be like, so hey, buddy. Tell me, how do you run your business, right? I can't call, some of these other guys. So, and if you were to get the advice from a direct competitor, you would also always be suspect of the advice you're getting. Yeah. So I found the advice I was getting was either like dubious at best, or just wrong, or I don't have any faith in what he's telling me. And so you're on this island, and we figured it out. We figured out a lot of things on our own, but going, to talk to other business owners who are also lawyers, who are not competitors with you, their strengths, they're getting, we can all collaborate with each other. I had a lawyer call me yesterday, the whole way to the office. He's a lawyer in Baton Rouge. I guess technically we could be competitors, but I don't really view him as a competitor. He's a wonderful guy. And we just had the most frank conversation about how we pay our lawyers. How much are they getting paid? How, what are the outer limits? Is he paying too much? Am I paying too much? And all of that. Now, that's a really sensitive topic.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to have that conversation with anybody.
Sometimes it can be, for sure.
Right? I mean, so and it's not something that we would broadcast throughout here, right? And so it's like very private, right? We're talking about finances. We're talking about, and he was like, well, thanks so much. It was, this is really helpful. And it was really helpful for me to hear what he was paying his lawyers, because I was like, okay, I was always a little insecure about what we were doing. Why? Because there was like, well, we pay them this and we do this. And where'd you come up with that? Oh, I made it up.
Yeah.
Right. I was like in the shower and I was like, that sounds perfect. I'll do that. Right. I just made it up, but he's doing something very similar. And so I was like, oh, okay. All right. Maybe we're all right here. Maybe this is what we're doing. So to know that, in retail, and the other part of what I love about what you just said is this. I know the business that you used to run, and it's always interesting to see the entrepreneur, the business owner from their own perspective. What you described about owning that business is not my experience with that business. The members of my family have tried to bankrupt us by shopping at your business. And so it was huge. So it was hugely successful. Everybody knows about it. And I think, and so kudos to you. But it's always fun to hear you're like, oh, this was like a horrible journey. Not horrible, but like
it was an amazing
difficult journey.
But I think for me, and what I try to tell my clients is, when I was 21 when I started the basketry.
Oh, wow.
21 in my dorm room.
Okay.
I did not even know that the word vision or strategy or reverse engineering into your profit. None of that. I mean, you didn't talk like that.
Right.
So
nobody talks
as
like
I
that,
went
right?
through my journey, and you reach year 10, you're like, God, I'm not making any money, but this is amazing, and I have this beautiful company, and everyone's happy, and I'm growing and growing. At some point, someone said to me, "What's your vision for this company?" And then I had to think about it. So when I thought about it, I said, I'd love to own my own building one day. I would love to have 20 people. I would love to have a leadership team. I would love to not have to work 7 days a week. So you start crafting this vision of what you want your life to look like, how much money you want to drive in. Like, I want my revenue to be $3 million, let's just say. Well, how do we get there? So there goes your strategic plan.
Right.
So it's not over the top. Everybody does it. You think everyone's doing this, but really in retail, some of these clients of mine aren't thinking that way. They just want to get through the day.
Right.
Or, wow, summer was slow. I just need to have an amazing Christmas. Or, I'm not ready for Christmas. Or, I don't even know what I'm going to do for Mardi Gras. So my job is to get them on track, to lead with a strategy. And how much do you pay your employees? Like, we need a strategy for that, right?
Right.
I just got off the phone with one. She wants to hire a social media website person to work from home a few days a week. And she says, well, how much do you think I should pay her? Well, we have to craft that. We can't just pull a number out of the air.
Right.
How many hours is it going to take? What's
she
her
gonna
role
do?
going to look like?
Right.
What are the expectations for this role? I mean, she's driving your vision and driving revenue. Maybe we should tie revenue from social media to her weekly pay. And so what if she gets paid $50 an hour? Good for her. She's making you a lot of money.
Right.
So let's think.
That's like taxes.
Let's think. Yeah.
We just having to pay a lot of taxes means you made a lot of money, right? So you might piss you off, but like look at
unless you invest and figure that out.
Right.
Handle that right. You have to have a good CPA for that. But yeah, there has to be a vision, a strategy, and also looking under the hood to see what is really wrong. Maybe you have the wrong team members. Maybe you just have the wrong lawyers, or maybe you just.
No, we have the best lawyers.
You have the best, but you don't know. Like, you think you only know what you know.
For sure.
Until someone comes ahead of you and says, there might be a better way to do this.
Well, and so our firm, as I said before, we're entering in that 10th year. We've always grown year over year. And so I remember I started the business. I gave myself a $2,000 loan.
Wow.
I took $2,000 and I put it into a different bank account, and then I called it a loan. So it was in the Justin Chopin account, and then it was in the Chopin law firm account. And that was it. I had a back office. My wife bought me as I don't know if it was like a birthday present or something like that, but like a cheap Office Depot desk and like a really inexpensive chair from Staples. And that was it. I had a law firm, and I would wake up and I'd walk down the hall with a cup of coffee, and I would sit there in my boxers, and work intensely thinking, okay, how am I going to get more clients? How am I going to get more clients? But so we started doing some things, I started doing some things, and from that started in September 2015. By October in 2015, I was renting an office in this building.
In a month?
In 1 month.
Wow.
And I looked at the revenue for that month. I started picking up divorces, because everybody wants a divorce when you're 30, or 35. They're just easy, it's, low-lying fruit, right? And we would do it, and I would do it. And I used to grade the bar on that section, and so like I don't do divorce work, but I'm pretty knowledgeable about it. And so it was, if you do it on a flat fee, you earn it like up front. And so it's not like the best way to practice law, but if you really just need income, you can do that. And so I looked, and that first month I was like, hey, you know what? At your defense job, you wouldn't have made this last month. So within the first month, we were already sort of in a positive, cash flow. Now, I wasn't making any money, right? It's just that's revenue, zero profit, of course. And so the next month, I'm in this building renting an office from another lawyer who's now a big time lawyer advertiser, but he wasn't in those days, and we kind of helped each other out. Within under a year, we were in this office space, and we've been here since. And then each year we've grown, where we're adding lawyers, we're adding staff.
How many lawyers do you have now?
10 lawyers now.
Okay.
I'm looking to add 1 to 2 in the short term, in the long term. But but when we talk about vision, I didn't have any vision for the Chopin Law Firm. I kind of knew that my vision was, and I think it's what a lot of people think when they say, "What's your vision?" My vision was, I want to be successful, right? That's not a vision, because it's very inarticulate. Everybody wants to be successful. Nobody ever sets out and was like, I would like to be mediocre, revenue low, profit low, right? Like that's no one's vision.
Yeah, that's not a vision.
Right, it's not a vision. And so when someone says, when I first started working with a mentor, what is your vision? And I'm like, I just, to make money. And a lot of it's a product of where you started, of where I started. It's kind of like I have kids, right? So I still view my kids as like babies. I view the law firm's like my child, right? So I still view law firm as in its infancy. So that means every lead that comes through, like I'm on it, like white on rice.
You're on it?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
I can't get out of it because I still remember the days when every lead mattered. Right. And so we've grown now. We have a director. We have an intake. We used to have one intake person. Now we're building out an intake department. Right. So we've grown all these things. Do I have to live in intake? No, I just like to. But it's a product of where we started and a lot of the things we do. So when people said, like, what was your vision? I really didn't have a vision. When they said, what are your goals? And my goals have always been growth, but without any concrete strategic plan in place. And they would say, okay, well, let's talk about the data. Like, what are your numbers? Like when I was like, oh, what do you mean? They're like, well, how many cases do you open a month? And I was like, oh, I generally knew. And they're like, how many do you close? And I was like, I don't know. What's your ROI? And I was like, oh, I definitely don't know that. I didn't even know what those. I had to Google it. I was like, oh, my ROI. Hold on one second. Let me see. Oh yeah, I don't know that. And so because we're lawyers, we're not business owners, right? Nobody teaches you in law school how to run a business, and running a law firm is no different than running a retail, right? Well, so you have like point of sale and all those like inventory and things like that, but at the end of the day, right, you're selling to consumers.
Well, let me ask you this. So the goal in your vision should be to have a scalable company. Do you feel like your business is scalable?
We are getting there.
Okay.
2 years ago, absolutely not. Over the last year, we've sort of doubled in size. We took this year to really retool and purposefully did not try to build a whole lot more. We had some lawyers that we thought were like, we can do better. So we replaced those roles with really good lawyers. We had some staff because we went on a hiring spree. Yeah. We went to like rock bottom. It was like truly like drug addict rock bottom, but for like law firms. I had no staff. I had like one staff member, and I had all these lawyers, and we had all these cases, and it was just we were at a standstill. And it was then that I kind of had this realization, where, Justin, you were so focused on not spending any money that you allowed this to sort of implode on yourself. And so, about 18 months ago, we were like, okay, we got to right this ship. because we'll never be able to grow like this. And so we started, but here's the deal about hiring. I assume, I'll be curious to see if you agree with me. Okay. When you need to hire somebody, there's nobody good to hire.
Because that's the wrong time to hire.
right. So if you're like, man, I really got to get a lawyer in here, you're getting like really bad applicants.
Yeah.
If you really need a paralegal, there are no paralegals. They all died. I don't know. They all got the plague or something, or they all went on a cruise together.
I'll share this with you. I tell my retail clients, and I think this applies across the board, regardless of your industry. When you have a culture that attracts the kind of people you want on your team, then people need you. Yeah. Right? And so you're not looking for people are looking for you. And so the pool of applicants becomes a whole lot prettier.
Yes. And the other thing is I've learned that when we have a really good candidate, when somebody comes or we've found someone or someone comes to us, even if we don't really have the need for them, sometimes we're just like, we will create a need for this person because in 6 months from now, we're going to wish we had this person here.
Yeah. Sometimes you do have to do that.
Just, and so this year we really spent, kind of retooling. And then next year we want to have another rebuilding year, another growth year. So your question is, it's scalable. We're getting there. We are getting there. And a lot of what we've been doing with my director and I is looking at our processes and like brainstorming and thinking like, okay, this, so my paralegals all live in spreadsheets. So we don't use case managers. That's just not how we operate. We are all defense lawyers who became plaintiffs' lawyers. So we are very much wired that way. The firm is built that way, which means, the lawyers do the work. But that can get tricky too. But we have this commitment that we're not going to be that kind of law firm. Like we're not going to have case managers. We're lawyers. We want to be lawyers. And so all of my staff were living in these spreadsheets and we're like, well, this case is assigned to this person, this person. And finally, we invested in all this new software. I guess, around the same time, about 18 months ago, we did everything, like new internet, new phones, more hiring, new software. Every day I would come in and there was something new. People were exhausted.
Yeah.
And so I said, listen, why are you using this spreadsheet? And one of the paralegals said to me, well, that was the spreadsheet from my predecessor paralegal, Justin, your first paralegal that you had hired back when you were 3 lawyers. And that was the spreadsheet she created. I said, okay, well, we can run reports for all of this. You're doing twice the work. Because one, you have to put it in our system, and then you're adding it to your spreadsheet. Right. This is not scalable. Like this is not, a business can't operate like this. You're just going to burn out, and then you're going to quit, or and then you'll be gone. And then we're going to have this like shambles of a spreadsheet. Let's get in the system. Let's use the software that we have to our advantage. Let's really leverage it instead of what we're doing now. So this whole year has been retooling to put us in a position for scalability. Yeah. I don't know that we have it, but we're getting there. It's an evolving sort of process. And that's the thing when people talk about the culture. We had this day here where when we asked the staff, what's our culture? What do I value? And they had no idea. They were like looking at me like I was completely insane, right? They were like, they knew I wasn't drunk because they were like, it's 11 a.m. So I know you're sober, but you're not making any sense. And I was like, it was shocking to me. I was like, you don't know what I value? You don't know what's most important to me? You don't know there's like these fundamentals of this business that stemmed from truly what I wanted to create from day one. And no, they had no idea. So you're right. I mean, and they didn't know because I just assumed that they knew.
Well,
foolishly.
And when you craft your vision and your culture is in there, so your vision should be so beautiful that you could share it with your entire team, your customers, you can blast it all over social media.
Yeah.
This law firm exists because this is the fun we have, but we also take law very serious. This is what we do for our clients, but we also celebrate everyone's birthday. Whatever you value to attract these people to come work for you. I mean, jeans on Friday. I don't know. It could just be something very simple, but it creates it's a space where people feel maybe like family or this fraternity.
We are. So we've been called a frat. We've had people, accuse us of being a frat. That is not by design.
No, that's a beautiful thing. That's a brotherhood.
Right.
That's
it just sort of happens. I would say it's like we're not a family. but we're all friends,
Okay.
and we all enjoy each other, and we have a lot of fun here.
That's good.
The lawyers, we're very homogenous. It's like, because we have this now. We have this deal. If you haven't sweated it out for 5 years minimum, representing insurance companies in corporate America, if you haven't been completely and utterly miserable in your existence and question why you ever became a lawyer, you can't work here. Because if you don't know misery, then you'll never appreciate the breath of fresh air it is to do what we do.
Yeah.
We love what we do. Every day I'm jazzed just to walk in this place. And if I walk here, if I'm here early and the business is closed, nothing gets me more excited than being able to open up the doors and turn it on and say, okay, we're open for business, because that is what I wanted. When I was miserable as a defense lawyer, I would go to the coffee shop uptown at the rink. What was it? Still Perkins, right? So it was an old, you're familiar with it.
I recognize that.
Yeah, and so it was like an old PJ's, and then there was another PJ's, and then they sued each other, and so they changed the name to Still Perkins. So it was like, if you ever wanted to be like, I want to have a PJ's coffee from like 1989, like that PJ's, not corporate PJ's, that you could go to Still Perkins because everything was the same way back then. It's now closed, rip, right? So, but I would go there and I'd be like, God, I want to own a coffee shop. This is amazing. You have to like,
I did too one time.
right?
Yeah.
I still actually would love it, and so I imagine it would be all the same headaches, because in those days I didn't understand that you could be a lawyer and a business owner,
Right.
and so it's just. I think there's like a video of me actually saying this somewhere out on the web somewhere. It's like, you could just, instead of serving coffee, you could just be, practicing law. But it's the same thing, right? And so, that's sort of the culture here, is that we all are here. We all still view it as kind of grassroots, even though we're like an 8-figure firm, and but we all view it like a grassroots project, and we're all helping each other out.
That's
we're all
amazing.
figuring it out as we go, and we're all brainstorming. And then the staff, like, I'll never forget, this happened after Hurricane Ida. We have hundreds of hurricane cases, and we're up against the deadline. Now the lawyers do what lawyers do, right? They stroll in here, maybe they don't have briefcases, but they just assume walk around with a briefcase. They stroll in here very lawyerly, very polished shoes. They sign up their cases, and then off they go to whatever it is they're going to do, fancy cocktails somewhere uptown. While me, as the owner, and the staff are here to make sure that everything's done the right way. And I didn't ask the staff to stay. I wasn't like, hey guys, hey man, everyone's pitching in, right? Bullshit. They told me, hey Justin, I just want you to know, I think we need to do some more work.
Yeah.
Is it okay to do a little bit of overtime? Because that's my rule. My rule is you're not allowed to do overtime. I don't want you to burn out. I want you to go home. I want you to have other interests and hobbies. And if you are doing overtime, it means that we weren't working efficiently to begin with. So I abhor overtime work, and I'm cheap. No, I'm kidding. So I said, yeah, that's fine. So I go, out of my office, I walk down the hallway, and they all have each paralegal sitting on the floor, and they've created spreadsheets. This is before, our systems. But actually, when you're dealing with something that big of a deal, sometimes you just need a paper, a pen, and a spreadsheet,
Sure.
right? And they were going through, and they were making sure that every single filing we had was met on the deadline, that service was being processed, that it was in the appropriate venue. But they didn't have to do that. I didn't ask them to do that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't even think to ask them to do that. They did it because they cared. And that was like a huge moment for me as a business owner. And really one of the things I'm most proud of them, and I'm most proud of myself, honestly, to be able to say, like, I created a business where people actually cared, not just about the individual case, but about the business in general, or about the process in general, because I internalize that as they care about you.
Yeah.
That was an enormous moment for me. I took them all out, afterwards to celebrate. And then we did it again this year, and now it's like a thing. Like now it's not like Staff Appreciation Day. Like, that's bullshit.
Right.
This is like, no, like, this is a day that I'm going to commemorate where you guys showed me the love, that I showed you. And so our culture here is always sort of, it's a fun kind of party atmosphere, but like everyone is intensely serious about what they're doing. I actually made the joke before you came in. which actually makes it sound like we have terrible culture, but like people don't take lunch here. Like the staff just like, they plow through lunch.
Yeah.
They're all chewing Adderall, all legal, I'm sure,
Right.
legal Adderall people, like, and that's their culture. It's like, they're insane. And anytime we hire someone new, I always have to be like, listen, you don't have to be this way. You can go to lunch. Everybody eats lunch. There are 8 billion people on this planet, and every one of them has a meal once a day, minimum.
Sure.
Most of them 2 to 3. But sure enough, like we just hired a bookkeeper, and so it's like her first day was Monday, and so today's Thursday. So I was like, I didn't get to say it on Monday. So finally Tuesday, I was like, I've been meaning to tell you this, but you're allowed to eat.
Yes.
Did you know?
Did you know?
Did you know that? Like, and you are allowed to drink things other than coffee.
Right.
And we have a bathroom too. And she's like, oh, I don't eat lunch. Don't worry about it.
Oh.
I was like, here we go.
It's who you're attracting.
I guess so. And
Hard
the
workers.
complete maniacs. And it's just like another reason why I'm very committed to this idea of no overtime, because if you allow them, these people will just work themselves into a grave.
Yeah.
Now the lawyers won't, but the real people that matter, they will. And I don't, I had a lawyer over there, his door's closed. He asked me one day, he's like, hey, he had just started. He's like, hey, I got this case, this lead came through. I don't know that I don't think there's anything there, but do you mind if I try it out? Mm-hmm. And my response was very honest and candid. I said, Frankie, you will find that I am very free with your time. Mm-hmm. So if you want to sit there and, work on this case that probably doesn't have merit, be my guest. Right. I was like, I'm very free with your time. I'm very free with other people's time and money. So yeah, go for it, man. And so that's why I said, like, the lawyer's like,
how did he
they'll
do?
be fine.
Did he take the case?
He took the case.
And was it a good
No, it was
idea?
a terrible case.
Terrible
We knew
idea.
it was a terrible case.
Okay.
But sometimes you don't know. Sometimes a case comes in the door and it sounds like fabulous, right? And then you get into it and you're like, this is junk. Like, there's just nothing there, right?
Yeah.
Like our client, we had one, I was rear-ended by an 18-wheeler. You're like, okay, great. And then, you start digging more and more and more, and the 18-wheeler's like, that's actually impossible. We were up on like a really high-pitched overpass, and your client put their car in reverse.
Yeah.
You're like, I always believe my clients, but what you're saying does make sense, right? And so, and then sometimes the case that comes in, we were like, I don't really think this has merit, but let me look. Let me just, I'll hear you out. Let's investigate it. It ends up being an incredibly valuable case. So you don't really know. In this instance, I did know because I've been doing this a lot longer. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to tell you right now, that's junk. But as a younger lawyer, very seasoned, he is a very good lawyer. He teaches me about things every day. This is why I like him. I like my lawyers teach me. But as a younger, new plaintiff's lawyer, it takes a while to learn like what's going to sell and what doesn't, right? So it's just, I imagine in retail, like there are some products that sell and there are some products that you're like, yeah, everybody has those,
exactly.
At their register and nobody buys them,
yeah.
right? And so like I know that that's not a good case because I've been down this road a million times. But you know what? The next time that lead comes through, he's going to be like, no, I'm not going to take that.
Right.
But you got to learn it somewhere, and sometimes the best way is to put some time into it and realize afterwards, like, oh, okay, yeah, this is no good.
Yeah.
So, but
amazing. Well, it sounds like you've done a great job, and you have.
Well,
I would call it in my world, a team managed company. Maybe you don't have to show up for a few days and things still go moving right along.
So that happened for the first time this year. I went and took the family to Colorado for 2 weeks.
Nice.
And I've left for 1 week. I've never left for 2 weeks, and it was really bizarre because I didn't have anything to do.
Yeah.
I would be like, okay, and I'm going to go for a hike, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to make a sandwich. I'm going to sit down at my computer, and I'm going to work.
Yeah.
And then I would get there, and it was more like all the emails were more like FYIs. I was just sitting there, like, kind of deleting emails.
Yeah.
It was wild. I was like, okay, well, so you guys really doesn't look like you need me. It looks like everyone's kind of got it. Fine. I guess I'll go back out. It was almost like I kind of didn't like it. Like I loved it. I think it's good. As we get older, I want to be able to do things. I want to be able to take my kids, to Colorado. I want to show my kids another world out there. Like, hey, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have swamp ass in Southeast Louisiana.
No.
Like there are other places in the world. And so this is, like my dad was a lawyer, my mom's a lawyer. we weren't taking trips like that when we were kids, right? I mean, we weren't. I learned those things as an adult because he was working. He couldn't step away for 2 weeks. Even if he wanted to. And by the time he could, we were old, and those moments were gone. So we are kind of getting to that point. I'd love to see what would happen if I left for a month, but it also,
Well, the reason
crazy.
I asked is a lot of times as business owners, because you are, and more than a lawyer, you're in your own way.
Oh, sure, for
and
sure.
So when you're talking about exit planning, which is something I had to think about in my first business, I mean, I worked 15-hour days. It was just insane. So
Yes.
I knew I cannot sell this company working like that because no one wants to buy a job.
Right.
They want to buy a company. So first and foremost, I needed to create a team that could operate without me, and I had to give away a lot of my jobs. And I, too, found myself, what do I do? I'm a little kind of bored, not doing the same things I was doing. So I had to do a whole mind shift, which is something that you would probably have to do if you created an exit plan. Because, I mean, you can't, do you want to die with this business? Do you want to give it away? Do you want to sell it? I mean, you have to think about these things.
So
business
the practice,
owners have to think about
true.
that.
You're not technically allowed to sell a law practice yet. There are, I do think in the next generation that's going to change. The practice of law is still like what we call it, the practice of law. It's not a business, but it is, right? And so, I had a lawyer I was interviewing. He's like, and I assume you'll just like retire at like 60? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
No. I was like, no, we are going to grind this thing out until, I stroke out in my office. But that's just how I'm wired. I think it's good. I think it's healthy. I think, I don't have an exit strategy, but I'm 45 years old, so I have plenty of time to worry about.
That was about when I thought about mine.
Yeah.
I was about 45. And I said, I want to be retired at 50. And I was retired at 50.
But you're not, because then you get to.
I was retired from that.
And you get to invest in new projects like the retail lab.
But from 45 to 50, I had to get the business in shape to be able to be sellable. And I had to make it scalable. What was my multiplier? What is the thing that's going to keep the money coming in the door and not depend on the door to open every day? I couldn't depend on customers to walk in. I had to figure out, how am I going to make revenue happen all the time without having to hit the pavement and just constantly beg for it?
Right. No, and that's, so I'm not looking for an exit strategy, but I agree with everything you're saying. And so that's actually one of the reasons I hired this bookkeeper. Strictly speaking, we have a bookkeeper, but we have a fractional offsite bookkeeper because he's a CPA and a JD. And so my CPA used to laugh at me and be like, Justin, that's actually not how any of this works. I was like, well, look, just like I'm not a business owner, I'm also not a freaking CPA.
No,
okay,
and you shouldn't.
Right, and so he'd be like, "Well, that's not. You have to hold that on the books." And I was like, "What does that even mean? What are you talking about? What books?
Yeah. Right.
There's
right.
a book. I'm not a CPA. And so we have this fractional CPA, but all he does is sort of backhouse bookkeeping, and I was the actual bookkeeper, and that's what was standing in my way, was the fact that I was the highest paid bookkeeper,
right.
In the city, because I would just sit there at my desk and be like, Justin, I need checks for this. Justin, I need checks for this.
Yes.
And like an idiot, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you your checks.
Right.
And so I was like, this is dumb. This is just dumb. Like
Really
how much money am I even saving? Like
a really bad use of your time.
An enormous bad, but I don't really know what I'm going to do at this point. I was actually thinking, I went for a run yesterday, and I was like, maybe I should start getting my hands a little bit deeper in these in the cases now. I mean, I had to like remove myself a little bit from the minutia of the practice to work on the business. But now if I'm giving away all the aspects of the business owner, I'm like, maybe I can spend more time with the lawyers talking about the cases, or and then I was like, no. There are other projects. You're okay. But so for me, it wasn't always about exit strategy, but I am trying to build something that doesn't rely on me so that we can do more.
Yeah.
And because everyone
right.
here, they're in the trenches on every case.
Yeah.
Like they are worried about their clients and where they're going to treat, and are they going, and who's the other lawyer, who's the judge, what's the venue, what are the facts of the case, do we have our evidence, have we filed all the motions, do we need it, that's their life. No one is sitting there thinking, if Justin goes out of town for 2 weeks, who's going to sign checks?
Yeah.
Right. Like it doesn't even enter their mind that like there's this whole other aspect to what we're doing. And so I've been trying to kind of use this time to figure out, okay, for this next push, what are we going to need? What are we going to need to really get there?
What do we need to grow? Yeah.
What do we need? We're going to need more space again. We're going to need more intake, right? We're going to need, we used to have this thing, we still have it, where new leads come in and there was a simultaneous ring throughout the law firm. Everybody's phone rings when a new lead comes through, right?
Wow.
Because everything's is a product of where we started.
And
where we started was me being hyped, because when I started the law firm, everybody told me I was going to fail. Everybody said, you're crazy. Not everybody. Some people.
A lot of people told me that as well.
Right?
Totally.
They're like, it'll never work, Justin.
Work. You're never going to do this.
These guys never make money. You'll never have clients. That's what they all told me. And that's what, so my biggest fear was, as a business owner, or in those days I wasn't a business owner, I was just a lawyer. My biggest fear was I would be a lawyer without clients. So like, what's a lawyer without clients? It's like a joke I always make around here. When someone misses an intake, I'll be like, that was a good case. What's going on? And they're like, I was doing this. Or I was like, if you don't have clients, you know what a lawyer without clients? I was like, they're called baristas. So call them up. Let's call them back. But we were doing this simultaneous ring. Well, the staff is just like, Justin, people were crying. Right? But I was like, are you crying? Like their actual staff members were crying.
Not really good for your culture.
Somebody, right? They're like, somebody's having self-harm thoughts. And I was just like, okay, what if I were to just hire a receptionist? Would that help? And so sometimes I rely on them to help me out, to see the issue, right? But it's really funny as we talk about growth and scaling, and the big takeaway was, so if you continue to get this volume of cases and you don't get someone else to answer the phones, we're going to have a major problem here. Yeah. I want to hear a little bit more about the retail lab.
Okay.
And because I feel like I'm talking about me. What kind of businesses are you mentoring right now?
So currently, they're all boutique owners. They've all been in business for quite a while. They have really small teams, but their teams are not leadership teams. They're just people that do tasks. Some of my stores are transitioning from one store to the other, or just trying to drive different revenue streams, maybe going down the wholesale route and the retail route. But they're all boutique owners with similar problems, and I look under the hood, like I mentioned earlier, but they're all a little different, and they all have different needs.
I often see these, a lot of businesses on Magazine Street here in New Orleans, and I always think it's got to be, I imagine the rent is crazy high in some of those places. The product, you have to buy the product, you need to staff the place. And I often think to myself, it's got to be incredibly challenging to operate this boutique in the black.
It is. And what I try to tell them is, you have to think about your profit first. You have to think about how much money do you want to end up with at the end of the month. And then, your expenses are pretty set. If you live kind of in the lean, you don't want to live fat. You want to be careful about what you're spending. Well, now you need to figure out how much sales do you need to meet that. Where do you go find your clients? Are you people walking in the door? Are they coming through your website? Or are they coming from social media? Where are these people finding you? And what separates you from every other boutique?
Right.
Because people want to open businesses and let me just play Barbie and dress people all day long. They don't realize it's hard work.
You can do that if your goal is a tax write-off. But,
Yeah, of course. But you actually have to create repeat business, relationships, people who remember you for something. And they struggle with that. So I help them with that. That's a big part of the journey.
Yeah.
And when their sales are great and they're happy and they're doing great, they don't call me. It's when their sales start to crumble or their team is crumbling and they think, let me call Kristi and see what she has to say.
Yeah. Do you have weekly check-ins or monthly check-ins?
Yeah, it's a 12-week program.
Okay.
I use a signature process called Boss Up. We look at business mindset, B, right? Boss, business mindset first, prepare to exit at the end. And so there's a lot of talk in the middle between money, creating your standard operating procedures, building your teams. All of these things work together to create whatever goal it is for them. So we meet for a quarter. I like to say 12 weeks, but it's not consecutive because things come up. So maybe every week, every other week.
Right.
I work in person on Zoom. I have a whole book of tools that we work on together, so we can just get down to the nitty-gritty of, and sometimes back to the basics, really.
Yes.
Because sometimes going back to the basics is what they need, because they get so caught up in their own mindset.
Yeah, like you said, like typically it's the owner is the one standing in the way.
Yeah, and we look at what they're buying, and some of them are buying really bad, just really crappy stuff, or stuff that you can find anywhere.
Yeah.
Customers want something different and special. That was great about my first business. I always thought ahead, 3 months ahead. Our pictures were beautiful. Our gifts were beautiful. We did everything custom. That wasn't scalable, and I knew that, but that was okay because that's what made us special.
And you use local products.
At the basketry we use local and products from all over.
Sure.
But we definitely supported local people, and I encourage my clients to use local people. But it just depends on what do they need. What do they need to feel not alone, broke, and scared.
Yes.
And make money.
And sometimes it's just that collaboration. You just need another voice.
Yeah.
When I was alone, it's like I could talk to the other lawyers here. They don't know the answer. And more importantly, and this will sound worse, that I don't mean this to sound bad, but they don't care, right? Like they don't care about our procedures. They may for a minute.
Well, they care about their clients, but that's their focus.
Right,
Let me
and
just
everyone's
help my
on
client.
their own team, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like this team over here, they don't care what that team's doing.
Yeah.
They're doing it their way. And so really it's up to you as the owner, but it can be rewarding, but for every bit of reward out there, it's equally as it can be demoralizing. It could be, you're terrified.
It's just scary.
It's scary to have these, especially, in the practice of law, we have to for a plaintiff's injury, you have to advertise a lot. So you may be in a situation where you're very revenue high, but you're very profit low. So you're waking up in the middle of the night terrified.
Yeah.
We had a situation a couple of years ago where it's like, nobody settled any cases for a couple of months. I was like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah.
And I finally had to say, listen, we spend the same amount of money every month, whether you're settling cases or not. So if you like working here, if you like the Chopin Law Firm and you'd like to continue to be here and not for us to go bankrupt, you might want to consider making some freaking money so that we can keep the lights on. So I told my wife, I was thinking about this initiative or that. She was like, weren't you just like up in the middle of the night, like hyperventilating? And I was like, oh, that was 2 years ago. That was then. Everything's fine now.
It feels so good to know other people do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't wish harm on you. But
No,
it is so
it's
nice
very
to know
scary.
that I'm
I
not
look
the
at
only
it-
one that wakes up and go, holy shit, I got so much
We
to do.
got so many kids here and families that we support. I've got 2 kids. I think I counted them out one day. I don't even remember how many kids we have, but they're like everybody here has a family. Everybody here relies on the business, and the business and I am the business.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of weight to have on your shoulders. And they may not see what's coming down the pipeline. I can see it. And so, when I'm trying to affect change within the business, it's because I'm like, okay, you don't see it. I could see this play out 6, 7, 8 hands down. This is going to be a problem. Yeah. So I'm very into, because I can't shut up. And so I'm very much into giving the why. Right. Yeah. Right. So I like to give the why so that they understand. Sometimes my why is like really long and they're like, oh my God, I got it. But that's what my kids do. They're like, yeah, check.
We heard you the first
time.
Right.
But no, because I think it's important for them to understand, like, this is where we're going. This is what's happening now. This is what's not working. And let me tell you why it's not. So once I explain, I had this lawyer one time, but she wasn't like saving anything. I was like, we have like the most sophisticated software you can buy. It was ghastly expensive. And then we had to pay some company thousands of dollars a month just to like unroll it for us, And so for God's sakes, what are you doing? Like, you got to use it. You have to save this stuff. We just couldn't get her to do it. I finally had to say, you know what your problem is? You're young. You don't realize that you're going to die. And she was like, kind of offended about my bluntness. I was like, I'm going to dispel you of this misconception right now. You are absolutely going to die. You may walk out of this building tomorrow and a truck is going to run your ass over. She's like, oh, my word. And I was like, don't you get it? Your case is still going to be here. Your client is still going to be here. Clients don't die. Witnesses die. Clients don't die. They live forever. You die as a lawyer, but your case doesn't. And if you haven't done what you need to do so that your successor on this case can be successful for your client, for who you have taken this completely onerous, fiduciary, moral, ethical obligation to represent, then you're just not practicing law the right way. And it's because you think you'll do it tomorrow. But I have news for you. There's no tomorrow for you.
Right.
And, but you just can't, like, it just takes years of life to understand that. And so.
How did it end?
Oh, she doesn't work here anymore.
Okay.
Very nice. She's a very nice. I like her a lot. And I think she's going to be immensely successful with where she is. But, I've learned over the years, I can teach you how to be a plaintiff's lawyer. That's easy. I don't have the bandwidth to teach you how to be a lawyer. And that was over the last year, it was like a thing that we would talk about, and now it's just a rule, and I keep saying it over and over and over again. It's a rule. If you haven't sweated out, if you haven't been completely and utterly if you're not on the whatever iteration of Prozac is today, you don't get to be a plaintiff's lawyer. You're not depressed enough, and that's why, because you learn those good habits. In back in the day when I was learning to practice law, if I hadn't saved something to the file, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I would have been chewed out. Now we don't do that. We don't scream at people here. Maybe for fun, but not for work.
You just tell people they're going to die. And get hit by a bus.
Well, I think it's important for them to understand I could have said there could be a hurricane and then your files all be gone.
I completely
but they're too young to know Katrina. They don't understand that.
Right.
Like they weren't crawling on the floor for servers and rescuing a law firm, with all of its files locked in a battered tower somewhere, laying off all of its staff, wondering if they were ever. They weren't alive or even aware of that. So the Katrina situation is like a more real. But I mean, the truth is, everything I said is real. Everything I said is true.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got cases that go on for years, and that case is there. You're suing that product manufacturer, whether Justin Chopin is alive or not.
Yeah.
I'm getting the which means they are telling me to shut up.
Okay.
So, Kristi Brocato, the Retail Lab. If you are a retail owner, or if you're a business owner, and like me, you need someone to bounce ideas off. You need a mentor, or you need to collaborate. Everything you've said to me, I'm going to tell you right now, you should be checking out the Retail Lab. Tell them where they can find you.
Retailbusinesscoaching.com or my Instagram, Kristi Brocato.
Okay.
I keep it simple.
All right. Well, Kristi Brocato, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Listen, next time I'm gonna just walk down Magazine Street into every one of those boutiques.
And you're just going to yell
and I'm just going to be like, do you know Kristi? And they're like, you don't? You should, because that's a really expensive pillow, and I don't know who's going to buy that. You need to call Kristi. So thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.